Hey there! So today I'm going to be talking about a book that I just read that is a new release for the month of March, which is The Walls Around Us by Nova Ren Suma. This book was only released I think a couple of days ago, and I picked it up and just powered through it basically yesterday into last night. I finished it at like 2 in the morning last night / this morning, and so yeah, let's dive right in. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. It was very gripping, had very interesting plot lines. The characters were great. You felt like you didn't get it all like in the front of the book. It was spaced out very nicely. The plot and the hooks were, very well spaced, and even when the main sort of overarching mystery idea was resolved, which was resolved fairly early on, maybe like halfway through, you kind of were like, okay, I definitely know what's going on right now. There were still a bunch of like side questions and other little plot points that you really wanted to know the answer to that you forced you to keep reading just so you would know, which I really like. I hate sort of things where there's like one big build up to one thing and then you figure it out early and it's still building up and you're like, I already know what's going on. Can we move on, please? It just really bugs me when books are like that. So this book centered around the story of 3 different girls. It's told from the point of view of Amber, Violet, and Ori. Violet and Ori knew each other. They were both dancers together. They grew up together until a fateful night when Ori ends up being taken away and she is sent to prison. So it covers Violet's story of what happened to her and her memories of her and Ori and what she's been up to since Ori left and how her life has been and the way she looks back on it and the guilt that she feels over that night. And then it looks at Ori and her views. I felt like her point of view was less open and just, this is Ori, this is what I think, like that. It was more like her point of view was, I feel like, a majority of the time told through the perspective of others. But it talks about her and what she was like in prison and what she was like as a child and growing up with Violet and how there was sort of the disconnect because Violet came from a wealthy family who was well off and everything like that, and Ori's family, her mom left her, her dad was a long-haul trucker, she never had parental control basically and hung out with Violet all the time. And then the third girl is Amber, who is a inmate at Aurora Hills Juvenile Center, which is the prison that Ori gets sent to eventually, and she's kind of the link between the 2 girls. There was a really interesting, something that I wasn't expecting was there was like a sort of paranormal, supernatural aspect to the book, which I hadn't really known about leading into it. I didn't really know a lot going into this book, but I definitely did not know that there was any sort of supernatural, paranormal thing. I thought it was just a contemporary, but it actually played in really nicely. So Amber is kind of the link. She sees everything that happens in the present day, which is when Ori is there at the detention center and before Ori comes in even. And before Ori gets there, there's something that happens where she kind of like has a vision, but she sort of sees present day Violet, who's there long after it's shut down and no one should be there, but present day Violet, or future Violet from Amber's point of view, has a sort of connection with Amber, and they have this conversation about Ori, who hasn't even gotten to the detention center at that point in Amber's timeline. So that's like a really interesting merging of the way that they combine the timelines and everything like that. The way that the book starts, it kind of just thrusts you right into the action, which I have kind of a love-hate relationship with books like that. I really enjoy it when it's easy to pick up and you're just like, okay, we're running, we're going, I got it, good. But with books where it's a little more complex and you kind of have to sift your way through it all, which was a little bit true with this book, it gets a little confusing and you're like a little bit annoyed that you start out with like no clear direction and you're just like, I don't know what's going on, but sure, let's see if we can figure it out. One thing that I will say with each girl and their separate dialogues, separate point of views, it was really clearly distinguished between which girl was talking at which point in time in the book, which I thought was hugely helpful because If there's no clear distinction, sometimes it can get really confusing, especially since they're all teenage girls and there's no real distinction at times. But this book was really nice. A lot of times the chapters would have who was speaking at the very beginning of the chapter. So like with this one, you can see it says Amber at the top before the chapter title, so we know that this chapter is from Amber's point of view. So like I was saying earlier, it takes you a little bit to get your bearings, but once you're good with it, you understand, you start putting pieces together, and pretty soon after that you realize that the like overarching question that a couple of the characters have isn't really a question. Like you kind of know deep in your gut, okay, we know what really happened, but it doesn't detract from wanting to read the book at all. There's a bunch of little side questions about like what happened to put Amber in the detention center and what ended up happening to the girls in the detention center, because there's a little thing with that, and you just want to know, you have a burning desire, and they don't like just give it to you on a silver platter. There's like bits and pieces that you pick up from here and there, from different chapters, different girls, and so you keep reading, you keep devouring, because you just have to know, you know, what happened with this, what happened with this. I know that I know about the big thing, and it's not really going to be a mystery, but they're going to explain it eventually, but I don't really care. What I care about is this person and who did that there and how did this end up happening, and it still keeps you engaged, which is really good. The main reason that I took off half a star from this book and didn't give it a 5-star, I was like 3/4 of the way through and I was like, oh, this is totally a 5-star book, it's great, I love it. But the last 50 or so, maybe 50 to 100 pages completely tripped me up. I like didn't quite understand it at all. Like there were so many moments where like I'm not quite sure if I'm getting this exactly. I think part of it had to do with the paranormal aspect, and so I was like, I don't really know if this is happening for real or if it's just sort of something that they're imagining, or because the writing style kind of lends a lot to that. It's just kind of stream of consciousness, and you're like, I don't know if this is something that they're imagining or if it's something that's actually happening. And there's this weird sort of final event that happened that I just don't really know what was going on. That, granted, might have been in part due to the fact that it was like 2 in the morning and I had been reading this book for the past couple hours, and so I was just completely out of it. And I definitely feel like I owe it to the book to do a reread. I don't know if it'd be just that part specifically or the whole book, but I think it might become clearer on a reread. But the way my brain was processing it at the very end, I was like, I think I was just going so quickly because I really liked the book and I really wanted to know, you know, how it ended, and then I just got really confused. It was like bullet train going so fast, hit a brick wall, was just so confused. So that was, the only reason that I really took off a half a star. Otherwise, it's a great book. I definitely recommend it. Go check it out if you're at all interested in sort of murder mysteries or kind of creepy thrillers. This kind of reminded me a lot, actually, of a more eerie sort of We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, which I also did a review for, so if you're interested in checking that out, I will link it below. Really good book. Really interesting, really fascinating, really recommend it. Definitely go check it out. And that is my review for The Walls Around Us by Nova Renzuma. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!